Hey guys, it's Roy from A&S Gear, and we're going to look at the brand new Axe 2.0 today. So this is the newest version from Empire. It takes place of the basic Axe. They incorporated a lot of the features that you see in the Mini GS and the Axe Pro into the Axe 2.0. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Here's some of the colors that are available. The stock colors right now being the all black, the olive black or black olive, the gray red. There's also a black with copper, which kind of looks like a black tan. And then these two right here, these are just color swapped versions of taking like a black gun and the red parts and swapping them and giving you a black with red like this one. And this is taking basically what you have left over. You have the gray body with the black parts left over. So there's some colors that are available on the website that aren't stock colors and you'll only really find here. So check those ones out. So let's talk about what you're getting or what the differences between the Axe and the Axe 2 or 2.0 are going to be. So I'm going to move these ones out of the way because this one right here, I've already removed a bunch of the screws out of it so that we can get a better look at the gun itself. So I'm going to set these over here and this one over here. Actually, I'll put it down here. All right, so here is our Axe 2. This is a standard Axe right here, and then this is a Mini GS. Now I chose these because they have kind of the features that are incorporated into the 2.0. There are some features that came on the Axe Pro, which they then have incorporated into the Axe to give it a little bit of an upgrade as well. First things first is the barrel. With these, you got a one-piece 14-inch barrel, which was all right, but now it comes with the two-piece 14-inch, might have even been a 12-inch barrel on those other ones. I'm not sure, but it was one piece nonetheless. Now it comes with a two-piece 688 barrel right here, so that's super cool to get. Definitely a barrel upgrade compared to what you had from the standard Axe and the like the GS or the Mini. Next, feed neck. The feed neck on the standard Axe was a thread-in style feed neck. So the feed neck was attached to the body by threading it in and then Loctiting it in place. Now, if that ever came loose and backed up, sometimes when you threaded it back in, it went too far, it wouldn't hold right. So they've gotten away with that style, which is great. And they've moved to the same style that the GS has and the Axe Pro has, which is a clamp style. So underneath the feed neck, there's a base that the feed neck actually sits on. And then the bottom screw, ooh, my grips fell off. The bottom screw right there tightens down and clamps the feed neck onto the base unit. Super secure. It's not going to come flying off accidentally. It's not going to unthread itself. So it's definitely a better platform to secure the loaders to the gun. Definite step in the right direction. Moving down from there, you can see that now the Axe has eye covers on it. Whereas, or the Axe 2, the Axe standard Axe, original Axe, and the Mini GS, they have detents right here, but there's no way to access the eye from the outside of the gun. On these ones, to get to the eye board and the eyes themselves, you had to separate the body from the frame, take the transfer plate off, pull the whole board out, and then you could get to it. So now they've incorporated an eye cover, which we can remove. And that gives us access into the eye itself. So the cover comes off. You can see our detent. Our detent is now a typical nub style detent that you would have seen in like the Vanquish, the original Vanquishes, or Planet Eclipse uses the same kind of a detent nub. So it's definitely a tried and true system for that. And then your eye is right here. So you can take a pick like that. Let's say you've broken paint in your breech. You can actually get to the eye, lift the eye up and out of the way, clean it, clean in the hole, put the eye back in, and then just put the cover back on. Whereas before you had to do all sorts of crazy work just to get the eye out. And even once you got the eyes out, trying to clean the hole that the eye sat in was just a nightmare. So definitely a step in the right direction. I love that they've put eye covers in there. Taking a hint from the Axe Pro setup. I think it's a great choice. The back end here, they've gone with the same style as the Pro, where you can just push the button and it pops right out. On the old Axe, you had to push the button, rotate, pull, rotate, and then it would come all the way out. For these now, You just push the button and you can pull the bolt right out the back, right there. Let's pull this one out. You'd push, rotate, pull, rotate, and then the bolt would come out. So they've made it easier to get the bolt out of the back. You can see the bolts themselves, they really haven't changed at all. Same bolt, same spring, same bolt guide. The only difference being the hole in the side is cut a little bit bigger on these ones, and it's a little bit shorter. But the O-ring lineup is the same, placement is the same. They just got rid of this big back end that they didn't need. They've kind of machined the back of the gun differently, so you don't need this big thing sticking out to match this end anymore. It's much more compact back to it, so you can make the bolt smaller. Makes sense to me. All right, move that over there. All right, so moving around, the trigger, same trigger setup. They Microswitch setup. They didn't use the Hall effect sensor like the Mini did. So same trigger setup on there. Front of the gun, another major difference right here. They've gone with the same style rubber grip cover that they have for the GS and gotten rid of this all aluminum front. So this can be a little slippery, not as much grip to it. So again, going away from that makes it a nice, comfortable way to hold onto it. And then underneath it, the board or the battery plugs in just like the GS. On the Axe right here, there was a wire harness that came up and around that you always were fighting with. There we go. So you had to contend with this wire that's inside here. Do I crush it? Do I twist it? What do I do with it? So now they've gotten rid of that. You don't need to worry about the wires getting in the way anymore. The battery just snaps in and out. Very, very simple. So this is a composite front right here, and then the frame itself is aluminum. And it all comes together quite nicely. The button interface is larger now, so it's easier to push. More button surface area, so it's easier to do, especially if you have gloves on or anything like that. Still has one light for feedback, tells you what the gun is doing. Kind of had the same setup here, but you just had a much smaller button, and then with the light up from the front. Trigger guard shape has changed. This is more rounded, this is flat. Nothing too big there. Grips, obviously the grips are different in design, but still the same kind of grip setup on there. Next major difference would be the regulator at the bottom. So now the regulators don't come with a gauge on them. You can see the gauge on here, the gauge on here. I was shocked when they didn't put a gauge on it. I think that's asking for people to screw it up by not being able to see what pressure it is. It does say in the manual how to set it up from a factory standpoint. One thing I will say, at the time of me doing this video right now, the manual that you see on their website on Paintball Solutions in the Axe 2.0 section is wrong. They refer to the picture and the description is backwards. So what they're telling you how to set this up and the picture that it references is not right. So I'm going to tell you the right way to do it so that everything stays factory the way it should be. This right here, this is your input pressure. So this is your regulator. This controls the pressure coming from your tank and going into the gun itself. This should be flush. So this screw on the front should start at a flush position. So if you've adjusted it or moved it or anything like that, and you want to reset the gun, put this right here to a flush position. This on the back should be all the way turned in, and then one complete rotation counterclockwise or out to give you the stock positioning on there. That should give you a velocity of approximately 270, 275 feet per second. Now you might need to adjust that slightly, and that would be tiny, tiny little adjustments to get the gun where you need it to be. If you overpressurize this, you can potentially ruin the solenoid in the gun, which is not a good thing. Solenoids aren't that expensive, so it's not terrible, but it's just something you can avoid completely. So set it properly that way. Hopefully they fix the manual. I mean, it could be weeks or months, or it could be tomorrow. I don't know. But as of right now, the manual's wrong, so just be careful with that. It separates out the same as it did before. There's one more screw you have to deal with, though, this front screw to get the gun apart. So we'll go ahead and bring it apart real quick, and then we'll kind of put it back together. So one thing you want to remember when you're pulling it apart is just be gentle with it. Get your stuff off there. You can see our transfer tube right here. This is split in the middle, so when we pull it apart, these two will separate out. Our solenoid is right there. We want to wiggle it and just ease it out of there. Remember, the front screw right here needs to come out. This frame screw right inside here needs to come out, and the rear frame screw needs to come out to separate the two pieces. And again, I'm going to use my thumb and I'm going to push up from the front. I'm going to use my thumb on the back and I'm going to push up on the back. And I'm just going to kind of walk it out until I get it to slide apart and come out. If you're having to like use all your strength to get it out of there, either you forgot a screw or something's not quite right inside of there. So here's our solenoid, here's our transfer plate or our transfer tube, or this red piece would be our transfer plate. You can see our board. This is our upper eye board. And then this would be our, well, you can't see it, it's sitting right in there. It's our control board at the bottom. It's called the shockwave board, same board that's inside here. Different, not even a different version number. I believe they're all still the same. And then our microswitch is right here. So this is what the trigger pushes against to shoot every single time. It's really easy to adjust the trigger if you need to. You can control the magnet strength, starting position, and activation position through these screws. I've seen a lot of people adjust this activation screw, the microswitch activation screw, too far up, and it just continuously holds the trigger down or the switch down. So when they pull the trigger, nothing happens. It never releases the switch to shoot again. So if you've been shooting your gun and it's been working and then all of a sudden it stops working and you don't hear it clicking anymore, check this screw right here. Every once in a while, these will just move through the vibration of the gun and they'll move up and the gun will stop working, or they'll move down and the gun won't work because you're not hitting the switch anymore. It's a very simple fix on those ones. So just listen, if you pull the trigger and you don't hear a click anymore, check the switch inside there. Make sure that it hasn't set itself in the wrong position. When we go to put it back together, it is important that this O-ring is a very, very tiny, very fine O-ring that goes around the outside of this. We don't want to damage it when we try to put it in here. So let's make sure that we line those up properly when we put it together and then slide this in. They have made a indexing notch at the front, which makes this less likely to happen now. This big block at the front is where a screw comes through. The screw comes through the front and it interfaces with this. This also helps line the gun up properly so that these tabs that you see on the board right here properly go into these 8 holes on the socket right here. Now I've seen on X Pros and Mini GSs, people offset it and they don't line up properly. You'll get half of them in and half of them out, or they'll be off to the side, and it will cause the gun to do funny things, not shoot, the batteries overheat and get hot, all sorts of weird things can happen. So make sure that that lines up properly. And this big block at the front helps that from happening, but I guess it's possible to still happen. So we're going to push this together. We're going to make sure that these are lining up and that our front is going together and that our pins are going into the board in the proper way. So before I push it all the way down, I'm kind of looking in that gap right there to make sure that my pins are lined up. And I can see that my transfer tube is lined up and they're going in at a vertical angle, not off center or at a weird angle. And then I'm going to just push it in. And I'm going to watch it as I'm pushing it together to make sure that everything lines up properly. I can hear my clicking of my switch in there, so I know my trigger is pushing and releasing every single time. And then I'm ready to go. So at this point, I would throw all of my screws back in, push it all back together, put my grips back on. One new thing with the grips, they have a ridge, or the front grip, I should say. There's a little lip around the top now that actually fits underneath here. So if you don't pay attention and you just kind of stick this thing on here and put your screws in, this will sit up and out of the way. You want to make sure that you push it down and tuck it in to the front so that it fits flush inside there. Put that screw in and it will hold it in place. It's not going to ruin anything if you don't do it that way, but it's not going to look pretty. We all know paintball's about the looks. So that's it right there. There's your differences between your Axe and your Axe 2. Some great improvements that they incorporated into the GS, now into the 2.0. And some of the stuff from the Axe Pro they took and dropped down to the 2.0. So you get the best of both worlds. So definitely a great recommendation. It's a good step for moving on to that next level gun. Definitely recommend them. Check them out on the website. Axe 2.0's bunches of colors, so look on the website. There's going to be more colors coming as we change them around and do exclusives on them. So definitely pick one up. Axe 2.0, available through the website. Order yours now through ansgear.com.